So in this video, what I'm going to be doing is translating the sentences that are chock full of degrees and degree structures, as well as the back of the sheet that I'd given to you, which has the passage on it, and hopefully it will help you in your studying for the multiple choice and the vocabulary that is based off of it. As per usual, to reward you for watching this, I will be embedding 3 items or more, and all you have to do is put those items in those words to be able to earn yourself a free 100. So let's go ahead and get started. Caesar here is my subject. So Caesar always fought. Pugno pugnare means to fight. We get the word pugnacious and repugnant from it. And he fought ferocious. Now with the IUS, what we can see is that it is a comparative of some sort. Now it is either going to be a comparative, nominative, or accusative neuter, or it is an adverb. In this instance, it is an adverb because it is not modifying something neuter. Caesar is not neuter. So more ferociously, he, Caesar, always fought. Paolo. This is your ablative of degree of difference by a little bit, is what we would say, than other Romans. Now we all know that the way you translate ablatives are by, with, because of, from, in, on, at, than, but we know that it is than because it is the ablative hanging around the ferocia. So this is your ablative of comparison, that is your ablative of degree of difference. Now, what you could do is you could obviously, instead of altes Romanis, you could show comparison using quam, but that would mean that you would have to put other Romans in the same case as Caesar, and that would of course be alteri Romani in the nominative, because it is always fought more ferociously by a little bit than other Romans, implied fought. So, in Gaul, Caesar fought, and here it's imperfect fought, here it's perfect fought, but it's still pugno pugnare, most ferociously, and so 10 out of 10. This is the Gallic War. But, in plus an accusative is often going to mean against. You see this in the title of speeches like those that are the title of Cicero's speeches, but against Pompey in the Civil War, the Bellum Civilum, he fought quam ferocissime, as ferociously as possible, and just like Spinal Tap, he went from 10 to 11. And so, with quam plus a superlative, it means as blank as possible. Moving on to number 2. Sextus wants to give flowers, in the accusative, to a girl. Now, pulcriori is, of course, comparative with the I-O-R, because it has the long I, and we know that all comparative, or I should say all comparative adjectives are third declension. That I tells to me dative case, and so it is the girl prettier than Cornelia, rather than Sextus prettier than Cornelia. The other thing that tells me that it is girl and Cornelia being, of course, compared, is that when you have a quam, you put the word, or put the case of the word in the same case as the thing that's being compared to. So if it had been Sextus more pretty, it would be that you would take off the I, meaning now it's the variant, modifying Sextus, and it would be taking off the E, thus indeed quam Cornelia. The other way by which you could have shown the comparison is that you could simply have a word Cornelia in the ablative. So if it had been Sextus more pretty than Cornelia, all you'd have to do is really drop that I and drop that E, making it now the nominative that you see there. And so it says, the very happy girl, the most happy girl, if I see I long ye, future will be, will receive very pretty or most pretty flowers. Number 3, a maior equus. So a magnus would be big, maior is bigger. So a larger horse is able to run, that is not an adjective modifying something neuter, but now the comparative adverb, more quickly by much. The idiom would be much more quickly than a smaller horse. And of course, this is your ablative of comparison. This is the degree of difference, that's the comparison, both ablative. If I wanted, I could have used a quam, but if I had a quam, it would have been quam, and then you put echo in the nominative, which would be equus, and minore in the nominative is going to be just simply minor. And please note that I have intentionally put a literary device here, and that is the literary device of chiasmus, in which the horse is a B, and the horse is a B, and the size of the horse larger versus the size of the horse smaller that you have. And so therefore that chiasmus showing the contrast that is there. Number 4. Titus seeks, asks for, quirate, from quiro, quirere, quaesivi quaesitus. This is where we get the word inquisition. So Titus seeks more. Now remember that the word plus that you see here with the asterisk, the adjective, not the adverb, is going to always be substantive and imply more volume, more amount. And that is why you will always have with the plus a genitive part of a whole. So Titus seeks more volume of wine. Therefore, the slaves give Dodari Dedidatus the largest cup to Titus in the dative case because it is the receiver of the direct object, and we have that ditransitive verb. Ditransitive verbs will have direct objects accusative and indirect objects dative. So the slaves therefore give to Titus the biggest cup, but that cup is filled. Compleo complere, and long E in a second conjugation verb is present, is filled passively with wine worse, peore, that is the comparative of malus, bad, than quam, the wine having been given Dodari Dedidatus to others. And so what we see here is the usage of the quam dictates that we know is in the ablative because it is being compared to that we know. And so he gets the biggest cup, but he gets a lower quality wine in that bigger cup. The ones having been given to others, your indirect object again. Now, number 5, we are taking the word vinum, which of course in the nominative, vinum, and the genitive vini, and making it nominative plural. So the best wines, this would be Falernian and Massic and stuff like that. So the best wines are given passively to few dinner guests. Pauci, paukai, pauka means few. But, and pluribus is the comparative of multi. Multi is many, plures, and pluribus being the dative, is going to be more. But to more dinner guests, the worst implied wines are given. Only the senatorial upper classes get the best wines. The rest of them get the worst wines, which is not really true. It should have been, instead, pessima, probably more accurate, peora, worse wines, because the worst wines would have most likely been to the slaves, which is a type of wine called acetum, because it is almost turned into vinegar, which of course we all know that vinegar's main component is that of acetic acid, as it were. You can talk to your chemistry teacher about that. Now, moving on to the next one, your first word that you'll put in is the word paucis. P-A-U-C-I-S, no macron because you can't put it in Canvas, but that is your first one, your easy 100, paucis. Number 6, omnes clientes, all clients want. Now this essay could be from sum essay or it could be from edo essay, which means to eat, but since we are talking about drinking, we're most likely eating as well. So all the clients want to eat and to drink quam plurimam, as much as possible. And it's implied canam, as much dinner as possible. And so that's the thing that's kind of being implied, I think, there. And so remember quam plus a superlative, and this is certainly the superlative, plurimus, plurima, plurimum. Now if I were wanting it to be adverbial, it would have been the adverb plurimum, and it describes how they want to eat and drink. This is describing the direct object. What kind of dinner? As much as possible dinner. Now, moving on to the other side, which will also be included in the multiple choice, is the short little passage about the incident at dinner when Titus shows up slightly inebriated. Titus already had drunk, we see the pluperfect, more volume of wine by a lot. We would idiomatically say a lot more wine, but it is more volume of the wine by a lot than the other dinner guests. Now, if I didn't want to use quam, I would have merely put the ablative aleis and then convivis. And so by, with, because of, from, in, on, at, than. The comparative of plus tells me that my translation would have been than. Truly, vero, he had drunk, again, perfect stem, pluperfect ending, Plurimum vinum, the most wine. And I know that this plurimum is this plurimum and not this plurimum because it is doing what an adjective does, which is modify. And so he had drunk the most wine. Cornelius, therefore, shouted, perfect tense, to his native brother, quam iratissime, as angrily as possible. Why do you arrive? Why are you arriving? Sero means late, and so serias means more late. We would simply say later. And tanto is from the adjective tantus, tanta, tantum. So just like multo shows degree of difference, and paulo on the other side, this is so much, or by so much. So why do you always arrive later by so much? Idiomatically, so much later than the other dinner guests. Had this used a quam, it would be, of course, the same case as the understood subject you, and so that would be ali, and then for convivis it would have been convivi, had it had a quam, but it does not. And so he wants to know, why does he have that habit? Why do you always arrive later by so much, showing the degree of difference than the other guests? Quanto. Now, if tanto is the answer so much or so great, quanto asks the question. In this case, it's ablative degree of difference as well. And by how much? By how much more good, or simply better, the comparative of bonus, by how much more good is food when, and I know it's when because there's not an ablative, it is not the coldest, when it is not very cold. I like most hot, very hot food more than cold implied food. If I had not wanted to use a quam to show the comparison, you would have merely put the word frigidum with the word kibum implied as frigido and implied kibo. So it is the ablative by, with, because of, from, in, on, at, than. And remember, magis is the word that means more as in more greatly. But that means more, that means more. The difference is that plus you can measure. It's quantitative, that you cannot measure. More greatly you cannot measure how much more he likes the very hot food than cold food. Nevertheless, almost done. Your second word that you will be putting in is serious, the one that you see up here. S-E-R-I-U-S. That's the second word that you need to put in. So let's finish it up and see what happens. Then trays. Now maxima is superlative and it is with a quam. And so trays as large as possible, because at a certain point the trays cannot be carried, and so they are the as large as possible trays. Ferrofere tule latus, were carried, have been carried, not are, because you see it as a unit. It's perfect, telling me the present of the form of the verb to be paired with the perfect passive participle, making a perfect passive verb. Were carried, have been carried by the slaves. Because all, implying the dinner guests, hungered most greatly. So magis means more greatly, that means most, and so therefore, because all were hungering the most, they edere, from edo esse adi, the perfect stem, and the alternate perfect ending e isti it emis istis erunt, or ere. They ate the main course. It's really the second course. Remember, it goes gustatio as the first, followed by prima mensae, and then secundae mensae. So first tables is, of course, the second course or main course. So they ate the main course more quickly by a lot. We would say a lot more quickly idiomatically, but your degree of difference. And then here's your ablative of comparison than the first course. If we had used a quam, it would have been quam, and since we are comparing the gustatio to the prima mensam, it would have been gustationem in the same case as the thing to which it is being compared when you're using a quam. But without a quam, it's just your ablative of comparison. Thus it is by, with, because of, from, in, on, at. Since that is there, than. the first course, or the appetizers, or the hors d'oeuvres. Your third and final word is magis, M-A-G-I-S, the word that means more, that is qualitative and not quantitative. So hopefully this has helped you in preparations for the multiple choice over this, as well as the vocabulary. Good luck in your studying.